We all know that heart disease is a massive problem worldwide, but could this be a potential solution? Well, to answer that question, I need to take you back in time to 13th century China and the foothills of Liangshan. In the late 13th century, tucked between bamboo forests and the banks of the Yangtze, there was a village called Liangshan, and life in the village was very peaceful. There was just one problem. Every winter, when the cold winds came down from the mountains and the villagers stopped doing their physical work in the rice paddies, a lot of them began to fall ill. Chest pains, weakness, shortness of breath, dizziness. Some of them didn't even make it till the spring. And in Liangshan, they called this the winter weakening. Today, we'd probably just call it heart disease, but this was 700 years ago. And the village healer, Master Yijun, believed that wind spirits were stealing the warmth of the villagers' hearts. He had no other real explanation as to why this was happening every single year. Until one year, something unusual happened. At the far end of the village lived a blacksmith called Wen Li. And Wen Li did something strange, at least by the village standards. When the other villagers stopped working out in the fields and started spending day after day sat inside, Wen Li spent his time forging a collection of odd metal weights, round iron balls with a handle on the top. And he used his oddly shaped balls to keep his arms strong for hammering when the springtime came. He swung them, he lifted them overhead, he picked them up and put them back down again. They made him breathe heavy and sweat lots, even in the cold, wet winters of the mountain. But unlike most of the other villagers, he felt strong, healthy, and capable. And all the villagers called his creation Tiger Bells, the very first ancestors of kettlebells. And one winter, when some of the villagers started to collapse, the healer, Master Yijun, noticed something about Wen Li. His resting heart rate was low. His breathing was slow but powerful. His recovery was rapid, and he never felt breathless or had pains in his chest like most of the other villagers did. And Master Yijun even examined him 3 times, convinced that he'd made a mistake, but he hadn't. So he asked Wen Li to teach the villagers some of his movements. Not for hours, but just for 15 to 20 minutes, 3 to 4 times per week. Half the villagers agreed to do this. The other half refused. Too cold, too tired, too old, too sore, they said. But when winter came this time, something pretty remarkable happened. The villagers who had been training with Wen Li breathed easier, they felt warmer, their minds were clearer, and not just that, they had stronger pulses. They recovered more quickly from the cold season. They could do more and feel less tired. And not a single one of them perished during the winter, which was quite the opposite to the other half of the village. The others struggled just as before. And after a few winters, the difference was undeniable. The villagers believed that Wen Li had discovered some magical way of fortifying the heart against winter. He hadn't, he was just 700 years early to finding out what modern exercise science now proves to us. So these villagers didn't know about VO2 max, endothelial function, blood pressure, stroke volume, but they did discover the same truth that modern science knows. And I'm not sure if this story is even real, but here's what I do know is true. There has been countless studies looking into high intensity interval training, or HIIT, which is often synonymous with kettlebell training. One of those examples is by Yura Gizar. This study found that in as little as 8 weeks of training, that there was a 24% increase in something called VO2 peak, which is a very strong predictor of cardiovascular health. And this kind of increase is not insignificant. It is a very, very big increase in just 8 weeks. And a meta-analysis, which is basically just a collection of loads of different studies all put together, done by Costa et al. In 2018, found that high intensity interval training, again, which is a style of training often done with kettlebells, can result in very significant reductions in blood pressure. So significant, in fact, that it can reduce your risk of all-cause mortality of strokes, heart attacks, and heart disease by up to 14%. And that's just with blood pressure. That's not even taking into account cholesterol, VO2 peak, endothelial function, all of these fancy words that basically are different components of heart health. So when you start using kettlebells consistently, even if it's just 2 to 3 days per week for 20 to 30 minutes at a time, your blood vessels will start to dilate better. That improves your blood flow around the body, and that reduces your risk of heart disease, of cardiovascular conditions. They also increase stroke volume. So remember we said that Wen Li had a strong pulse. A bigger stroke volume means that your heart pumps more blood every single time it beats. This means it doesn't need to beat as often, so your resting heart rate will come down, which again is a very good thing for your overall heart health. They also build muscular strength and muscular endurance, as well as cardiovascular fitness, which the combination of those things is associated with, firstly, a much higher quality of life, and secondly, a lower risk of poor health outcomes, especially as you get older. So, can this weird shaped chunk of metal actually prevent heart disease? Well, I'd have to say the answer is yes. Maybe it can't completely prevent it. There's obviously genetic factors that go into it as well. But if you're talking about risk management, minimizing your risks of developing heart disease, then yes, absolutely, these weird shaped weights can do that all by themselves in just 2 to 4 20 to 30 minute sessions per week. So if you found that video helpful, there's a video up here about what happens to your body in the first 30 days of kettlebell training, or YouTube thinks you'll like this video instead. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one.